Hello, and thank you for joining us today. I'm Melanie Reese, the Director of Cadre. On behalf of all of us here at Cadre, we are absolutely thrilled to present to you today's webinar from the Poway Unified School District in San Diego. This presentation is another in our continuing series of valuable Cadre webinars archived and available on our website. So as part of our mission, Cadre actively supports and promotes the prevention and resolution of disputes through partnerships and collaboration. And we hear your stories about building relationships and how that benefits the whole system. And the rewards of building a culture of trust and collaboration and cooperation between families and educators are self-evident. However, when we see hard data that backs up what we know about the value of investing in relationships, we get really excited. And when we heard about what was happening in the Poway Unified School District, we couldn't wait to share it with you all. The numbers coming out of their program are downright impressive and very much validates the work that we do and they do. After talking with them about their program, we learned about the many cool things that they're doing to build a culture of collaboration. And more striking is that they have the numbers to back it up. Their intentional efforts to engage parents as partners help save their district millions of dollars in attorney fees and settlement costs over the years. And I'm in charge of running my own PowerPoint here. So a few technical notes. Phone lines have been muted to minimize interruptions. At any point during the presentation, you can enter questions or comments into the chat, and they'll be monitoring it and sharing with each other as time allows. And it is my pleasure to introduce to you the presenters today from the school district, the Poway Unified School District in San Diego. I present to you Greg Mizell, the Associate Superintendent, a 30-year veteran in education. He's been a teacher, a principal, and administrator. And with him is Jody Payne, the Director of Family Engagement, Support, and Resolution. Jody, too, started her career as a teacher and then as a program specialist, and in her current role supports all of the district's alternative dispute resolution, mediation, and due process cases. And finally, we have Michelle O'Connor Ratcliffe, a Poway Unified School District board member and parent and longtime member of the community. Michelle is serving her 8th year as governing board member, earning degrees from Stanford University and UC Hastings Law, and is now a parent of 2 current Poway Unified students. So without further ado, I turn it over to our esteemed presenters.
So good morning. It's great to be with you guys today. Before we begin our presentation, I wanted to just emphasize at the onset that when it comes to navigating interpersonal conflict, no one bats 1,000. No one. So you will hear in our story today that we have made some progress repairing broken relationships and restoring trust. However, we've not arrived. In this category of work, there's no finish line. We celebrate our progress, absolutely, but we're also acutely aware, right, of the families with whom we continue to struggle. It seems in special education, when it comes to the drama triangle, you're either about to step into it, you're deep in it, or you're just beginning to come out of it. So with that said, let me share with you just a few details about our district, and then we'll delve into today's topic and our story. The Poway Unified School District was established in 1962. The district serves approximately 35,000 students who reside in a 100 square mile boundary in North San Diego County. Poway Unified is one of 42 school districts in San Diego County. As a point of reference, PUSD is the 3rd largest school district in this region and the 21st largest school district in the state of California. Presently, PUSD serves approximately 5,529 students with IEPs who represent 4,848 families. Each and every one of our 5,529 children comes to us with unique needs, challenges, and stories. Identifying the why behind an individual child's academic and/or social emotional struggle and creating a thoughtful plan to ensure they make progress towards goals. It's complex work, right? Where understandably disagreement can and often does occur between members of an IEP team. Navigating these disagreements skillfully without compromising the relationship has become a priority for our team in recent years. Because we all know, right, who loses the most when the adults can't agree? It's the child. In every context, when conflict is mismanaged, it breaks the relationship. Everything gets harder. Everything moves slower. However, when conflict is handled in a calm, respectful, transparent manner, disagreements can and often do lead to new understandings, deeper empathy and appreciation, improved systems and processes, and ultimately improve student outcomes. This morning, our team's excited to share with you highlights of our journey in learning, working to navigate conflict more productively. Next slide. So as you can clearly see on this slide, achieving agreement through the IEP process, as beneficial for all concerned, as I know we all agree it is, can be quite challenging. It's important to note that in the decade preceding the pandemic, due process filings in the state of California were up almost 75% from the 2007-2008 school year to the 2017-2018 school year. And since the pandemic, we've all experienced a concerning change in behavior, both in our students, staff, and parents. Some researchers are referring to this phenomenon as a mass stress-fueled response. Students are generally less mature and many are more anxious. They're requiring more behavioral and social emotional support. Adults, too, appear to have changed, at least for the time being. Staff are tired, some exhausted, and many report feeling burned out. Parents are less civil, some outright rude. These changes in behavior on all sides only serve to further complicate an already challenging landscape. Next slide. So during the same time period, due process case filings were skyrocketing across the state of California. The number of due process case filings in PUSD were steadily on the rise as well. As you can see on this slide, during the 2017-2018 school year, there were 44 due process filings brought against the district, a high watermark for us. 44 instances of a conflict escalating to the point where attorneys were required to help us resolve our differences. In the 2018-19 school year, my first year in this new role, there were a record 49 due process case filings. Imagine that. Back-to-back years where we set new high watermarks. The cost in these cases was enormous. Lost time, lost trust, lost opportunity, and yes, lost revenue. Before we delve into how our team leaned into this leadership challenge, improving systems and ultimately student outcomes, I think it might be helpful to expand our understanding of the problem itself. Here to provide us some additional context, understanding the backstory behind these numbers, is school board member Michelle O'Connor Ratcliffe. Michelle?
Thanks, Greg. I'm here to give you the sad backstory on some of these numbers, on what led to it. But know that as negative as this is going to sound for a short time, it gets way, way better. By the time we get to Jody, I hope some of you will be feeling really, really excited. As Melanie said earlier, I've been a member of the school board in Poway Unified for almost 8 years. And again, it will become obvious as we continue to tell our story here that the district's special education approach has changed tremendously over that time. So I'm going to take us way, way back to when, maybe just before I decided to run for school board. My children at that time were in preschool and kindergarten, and I was at my first board meeting ever, watching my mom receive an award there. So I was fascinated. I knew there was an agenda item coming up though after the awards concerning special education. So I decided to stay put for the rest of the meeting. And oh my gosh, the rest is history. But I left that meeting feeling disappointed and thoughtful. So the way that that staff and the board members spoke about special education then didn't seem right to me, as if it was an expensive burden that they were being forced to fund at the expense of regular kids who didn't have so many behavior problems. Yeah, stop me if you've ever heard that before. So there was just so much wrong. And this was a public facing discussion. So what must have been happening in the background to make that okay to say in public? As a parent at the time of an autistic preschooler, now an 8th grader, I was worried. So although my child's experience in his own autism special day class had been great so far, the broader district attitude was just off. So for that reason and many others, I decided to run for office pretty much right then and there. And I won that election, really the right to peek behind the curtain at what was causing that attitude. So I began my crusade to change attitudes about our students with disabilities. And I was on that journey also as a parent. So always learning and my own understanding of disability and special education evolving through that time. And I think it still continues to this day. I began advocating for change, citing our district's poor inclusion statistics, our lack of staff training, legal duties to students with IEPs under the IDEA that we weren't fulfilling. We just weren't following the well-known, well-established best practices. I mean, really long time, well-established best practices. And that behind the scenes work that I was trying to do was falling mostly on deaf ears. And when it came to the administrators that we had in place at the time, and I was frustrated and I went looking for allies. And I decided I'd try out the Special Education Community Advisory Committee, the CAC. It seemed a great place to look because that group's made up of mostly parents, some district special education staff, some disability service providers, but parents of kids with disabilities. So from that very first meeting I attended as a brand new school board member, wow, the reception was frosty at best. So despite being one of them and a potential huge ally for everybody in that room, I was instantly met with distrust and really some outright hostility from someone in the room there. So tough room, I would say even toxic. And I stopped going to their meetings after a while. It was unproductive in the extreme. Special education was just the land of no. There was comfort in the inertia. Parents had grown to expect that from literally everyone associated with the district. I did find some allies eventually, and one of them brought to my attention a 2011 report from FCMAT, the Fiscal Crisis and Management Assistance Team. That group had been in our district, presumably at somebody's invitation, because we weren't having a fiscal crisis. So that means that the district invited them in if they wanted some management assistance. They had done a pretty comprehensive assessment of our special education program back in 2011. And yet it wasn't complimentary, but here it was in 2015 and that report was completely forgotten. But it had really substantiated so much of what I'd been saying. Again, behind the scenes, trying not to knock the district on the head too hard in the public facing forum of the school board meetings. Trying to get everyone to do the right thing from behind the scenes. But having one board member say something in the face of that, I think I already called it inertia, especially from directors of special education who should have known better, it just wasn't effective. So I started asking for another FCMAT visit. And finally, likely to shut me up and really thinking maybe they'd just get to throw it in a drawer again, administration agreed. So when that FCMAT report came back, validating again everything I'd been saying, recommending a 2-year plan to shift to an inclusion-based model based on LRE, I was overjoyed. Again, vindication. But change still might have eluded us had it not been for our board being able to hire a new superintendent. And this, well, okay, let me pause there, because there was a long period of interim superintendent while we were in the process of hiring our permanent leader. And I convinced our interim to create a committee to discuss those new FCMAP findings and those recommendations. So she hired an outside consultant. Oh boy, we brought in an outside consultant because we couldn't do it ourselves. We didn't have that know-how. Maybe we didn't have the will. I'm not sure where that fell apart, but okay, we brought in an outside consultant, and SEEK was born. This is the Special Education Advisory Committee. Very well-intentioned group, but really unwieldy. We had an absolutely enormous number of people in the room. It was nearly impossible to achieve any kind of consensus about anything. We were struggling, we were delaying again, and I couldn't help thinking, oh my God, this is what they were hoping for. But after way too many meetings over way too many months, we were trying to recommend, I say SEEK, the whole committee, trying to recommend a more inclusive model of instruction delivery. We were agreed that we needed some staff capacity building, and we needed to improve the welcome for our families who were just coming into the IEP world, make it friendlier, try not to let them get sucked into that very negative feeling right off the bat. And that lack of trust in the district before we could even get started. So that's about as far as we got. And this is the speed of change for me as a board member. I was losing my mind. I am just not that patient a person. And as a parent, I can see the opportunity slipping away from my own child to have more, to get more out of his education. And knowing that, oh my gosh, I'm in a position to make a change, and this is the speed. So in the face of that organizational dysfunction, frankly, we had parent distrust, high litigation numbers and costs, as you were seeing. The board finally got to hire our new leader, Dr. Marion Kim Phelps, as our new superintendent. And so after a fairly short time under her leadership, she recognized the issues I was pushing, needed a dedicated person to work on it, a dedicated associate superintendent, and the reorganization and reprioritization of special education happened. So after all that struggle, the system neglect, the lack of vision, the low morale, the distrust everywhere, and the students really being left in our wake, just in that land of inertia. In walks Mr. Mizell, woohoo! So I will say, he didn't know a lot about special education at the time, but his strength in system organization and his highly personal touch in outreach, that absolutely, no problem, he's gonna pick up the phone and call you, and it doesn't matter who you are. He's gonna pick up the phone and call you and work it out. Personal touch. That was exactly what we needed at exactly that right time. And oh my gosh, if we had to stall for another second, I would have lost my mind. But in walks Greg, and he got to work. So here's where our Poway Unified story starts to change. And I'm going to hand it back to Greg.
Thank you, Michelle. So can you, I'm just going to take a moment to appreciate the fire in her belly. It is so cool to be paired with leaders who care about our kids. And when I say our kids, I mean each and every, all of our kids and all of their stories. Through her advocacy, right, the door was opened wide for someone like me to walk through. And yeah, so picking this up, let's continue the story. Next slide. Yeah, fun headline here. So, all right, one of my first opportunities to set a different tone in our division occurred when I agreed to meet with a small group of parents turned critics. This group had been expressing concerns about the issue of dyslexia and reading instruction in PUSD. They'd been coming to school board meetings for several years, and sadly, they'd been largely ignored, as Michelle had alluded to, right? It was a culture of no. So listening to their personal stories, taking an interest in them, and listening, really listening to how their children had been negatively impacted by our side's sloppy craft in practice and pedagogy, I agreed to investigate. So during my first 90 days in this new role, I walked every special education classroom in the district. And I began to recognize that the concerns this local and small group of parents had shared with me were valid. Our staff did not universally screen students to identify children at risk for experiencing reading difficulties. Our staff did not participate in robust professional learning focused on applying the science of reading, implementing direct, explicit, sequential, systematic, and multisensory instruction to support students experiencing delays in learning to read. And our staff did not have access to evidence-based curriculum. So when I met with this group a second time to update them on my findings, they were elated. Someone was finally listening. Someone was validating their lived experience. It wasn't long thereafter, and I actually contracted with one of our most outspoken critics to provide professional learning to our staff, classified and certificated. As it turned out, this parent critic was a bona fide expert. Who knew? Using a specialized curriculum designed to support students profoundly impacted by dyslexia. Unfortunately, even as I was starting to make headway with this group and leading change, I was too late for one family in particular, and you can see them here in this slide. Right, their story, and it's a challenging one, was featured in the LA Times in the fall 2019. So I want to pause for just a moment. I want to encourage you. Look at the photo featured in this story closely. What do you see? Okay, I see folders, lots of folders, stacks of paper, reams of paper, and a huge binder. Clearly, right? Lots of time and effort was expended documenting a struggle. Now I want to encourage you to look at mom and dad. How do they appear to you? So I'm going to describe them as resolute. Believe me, they were. And there, seated on the left, was their son and our student, a casualty in the disagreement. Their case was eventually settled before it went to the Circuit Court of Appeals. This photograph of this family reminds me of the price everyone pays when we don't navigate conflict well. Next slide. There we go. So recognizing there had to be a better way, the special education team was reorganized during the 2018-19 school year. Staff made a commitment to engage with our parents with more intentionality. We agreed to work at resolving conflict at the lowest level. Instead of assuming a defensive posture as had been our past practice, staff agreed to focus on making it right versus being right. Staff committed to listen with the purpose of understanding. A principal, Stephen Covey, turned into an entire chapter in his book, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. We became more visible, accessible, and open to problem solving. And Jody Payne, who you'll be hearing from in just a few moments, was made the special education director responsible for overseeing family engagement, support, and resolution. Looking at this slide, you can clearly see the changes implemented moved the needle pretty quickly and significantly. I want to invite you now to take just a moment to review this slide before we go on to the next. What stands out to you? Okay, next slide. So let's break the data down. The first thing you may have noticed looking at the previous slide is that while our total student enrollment is stagnant or slightly decreasing, the number of students with IEPs we are serving has steadily increased. You would think that would result in more conflict, right? More customers, more conflict, more costly litigation, but it hasn't. Next slide. Due process filings have steadily decreased from an all-time high of 49 just a few short years ago to most recently 18 this last school year. Come on, that's crazy. It's crazy even on our side to look at these numbers. It's crazy. Next slide. So, not surprisingly, with the 59% decrease in due process filings, attorney fees are coming down as well. From 2017 to 2022, we've seen a 22% decrease. Next slide. So due process filings are down 59%, attorney fees are down 22%, and as you can see here, average due process settlement costs are down as well. 54% from a high of almost $2 million in 2018-19 to just over $200,000 in the 2020-2021 school year, which was mostly pre-pandemic. And this last school year, working through the challenges of the pandemic, without a waiver to IDEA, our staff still managed to contain our legal costs and minimize the district's legal exposure. Next slide. So shortly after Director Payne's appointment, our team recommitted to two things: resurrecting the alternative dispute resolution process, which had existed in PUSD previously, but had been largely underutilized, and increasing staff accountability. Systems work. You can see from this slide, in 4 short years, conflicts resolved through the ADR process in PUSD have increased a staggering 1,100%. So part of the backstory, right, of our department's success has been focusing on utilizing with greater intentionality the alternative dispute resolution process. ADR uniquely allows staff the room to problem solve creatively. Through alternative dispute resolution, we focus on the student and identifying shared interests. As I shared earlier, we listen to understand. Participants are encouraged to suspend judgment, assume good intentions, and change their focus from being right to making it right. This shift to a mediator's mindset has helped improve community relations, preserve trust with the families we serve, and enabled staff to resolve conflict more creatively and responsively. We don't always agree, but our efforts have yielded many positive results, including contributing to reduced CDE and OCR complaints the last few years. We also established a new protocol in 2018-2019. Every single due process and ADR case is analyzed, and staff at the sending school sites are debriefed on findings and concerns. Implementing this practice has helped improve accountability in the system, supported new understandings, and helped staff identify where processes and protocols require improvement. Next slide. 99.97%. I have to say I love this number. As stated earlier, PUSD presently supports 5,529 students with disabilities who represent 4,848 families. To date, only 0.03% of our families have filed either due process or participated in an alternative dispute resolution. Put another way, 99.97% of our families are somehow successfully navigating the tense and often stressful and overwhelming landscape of disagreement that is inherently a part of the IEP process, working directly with education specialists without requiring any formal conflict mediation. So I expect by now you have to be wondering, right, about the backstory behind all these numbers. Like, what's the difference that's made the difference? Because just a few short years ago, our numbers didn't look like this. Well, truthfully, there are a lot of variables at play in this work, which have helped contribute to our district's improved outcomes. Some obvious, many more subtle. However, when you really break it down, our team's success has been dependent upon two things: a commitment to systems improvement and careful attention to the relationship. You've heard a bit about our effort improving systems. Joining me now to share more about attention to the relationship is Special Education Director Jody Payne. You're up, Jody.
Thank you. I was unable to unmute. I thought that was a sign. All right. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Vizel. Well, as you heard school board member Michelle O'Connor Ratcliffe share earlier, relationships with parents in our district were strained. When I was first tasked with family engagement and support, family engagement, support, and resolution. Before we could hope to improve those strained relationships, we needed to get our house in order. We began by organizing as directors. We worked to eliminate ambiguity, and that helped to improve accountability. Then we worked with our program specialists. Program specialists were trained in the ADR framework and encouraged to adapt a mediator's mindset. It's a fine line we ask our staff to walk, balancing our interest in creatively solving problems while not giving away the store. The program specialist's involvement in the IEP meeting process shortly thereafter helped improve the district's welcome, as well as help to support our stronger student outcomes. Program specialists attended an average of 85 IEP meetings per month last school year. Additionally, they participated in an average of 20 pre-staffing meetings monthly with IEP teams. The support our program specialists have provided to education specialists and administrators has helped PUSD more skillfully navigate disagreement as well as reduce procedural errors. Next slide, please.
Hey, Jody, I think we might be one slide off. I just want to make sure you saw that. So we might want to, yeah, there you go. Thank you.
Okay, so double checking right now. This is showing slide 13. Is that what you're showing here too? Let me double check. Yeah, the CAC. Okay, excellent. We're lined up again. I like when that happens. All righty. While staff had always attended community advisory meetings, they had assumed a passive role. Parents were frustrated with the district, and meetings often took a negative tone. In 2018, Greg and all the directors began attending the monthly CAC meetings, increasing our visibility, demonstrating a commitment to be present and available. It went a long way towards helping reset the relationship. Our team began assisting in the creation of meeting agendas and offered to present on a variety of topics of interest within the community. This effort went a long way towards restoring trust and credibility. Finally, as concerns were shared with us, and they were regularly, staff followed up diligently and returned monthly with updates. We were listening and responding. And that became obvious to everyone. It made a huge difference. Next slide, please. Our special education department was tasked by the Special Education Advisory Committee that Ms. O'Connor Ratcliffe had mentioned earlier, and the CAC, again in the fall of 2018, to work on improving the welcome. Parents whose children were newly qualifying for services or parents moving into the district from outside reported feeling intimidated, outnumbered, and often marginalized in IEP meetings. As a result, they were seeking the support of advocates and attorneys to help even the playing field. An action committee was formed and included our parent engagement liaison, the director of special education, inclusive practices teacher on special assignment, and 4 hand-picked parent partners. This committee crafted a 3-year strategic plan to roll out our system supports for our families. One prominent idea that emerged from the conversation was to recruit and train a parent ambassador volunteer for each one of our 39 schools. A parent ambassador was envisioned to be a lifeline for our families, someone who knew the school and staff well, someone who had a child with a disability and who could empathize and support families new to special education, as well as new to the district. Someone familiar with the district and resources available to support families. We began with 4 parent ambassadors the first year and ended the year with 10 parent ambassadors. Recruitment was ongoing. A Blackboard message was sent out to our families who had children with disabilities, explaining the volunteer opportunity, and that Blackboard announcement also included a link for the application for those parents who were interested in applying. A website was also developed, and you can explore it at powayusd.com. The tab for Parent Ambassadors Program is located on the special education page. Upon approval of the application, the parent is introduced in their new role to the site administrator as a parent ambassador. The parent engagement liaison schedules a time for face-to-face meetup with the school's special education team. Once a parent ambassador has officially, or once a parent has officially become a parent ambassador, they're invited into Slack. That's our primary communication platform. Through this platform, the parent ambassadors receive consistent communication from each other, the parent engagement liaison, and me. Parent ambassadors come together twice a month, once for new learning, exploring topics like our Exceptional Family Resource Center, their supports and services they have available, transition planning for students matriculating, perhaps between pre-K to K, elementary to middle school to high school, and high school and beyond, and how to navigate challenging situations, amongst others. This school year, the new learning opportunities have been open to all parents and guardians of students with disabilities in our district. The second monthly meeting is with the parent ambassadors, parent engagement liaison, and me. In these meetings, we review the trending issues or concerns we're receiving from our Get Connected button on our website. Parent ambassadors also share out about their current experiences in this volunteer role. It's an opportunity for collaboration and celebration within our group. The Parent Ambassador Program has certainly improved our parental outreach effort. Over 54 parents have now volunteered to participate in this innovative program. Since the Parent Ambassadors launch, we have distributed over 4,500 informational flyers on the Parent Ambassador Program. We've distributed these to the school sites, and they then provide those to our students with special needs on IEPs, and they're sent home in their backpack. We have our Get Connected button that I referenced earlier. It's a QR code that has been accessed over 110 times since November 2021. Of the 54 volunteers committed to supporting this program, we've collected a few parent ambassador testimonials. I thought it might be fun to just share a few with you. First testimonial. As a parent of a child with an IEP and a child without an IEP, I saw the big need to promote inclusion beyond mainstreaming in the classroom at my school site. In general, my family and I felt excluded from the school community events. At a poster party, even at the start of the new 21-22 school year, my child and other kiddos with special needs, they were in tears. They thought they didn't belong because they were unable to find their name on a list. This parent joined the parent ambassador team. She also joined the school's foundation to work with the principal and the foundation to improve the special education student experience at school and community events. Historically, the events were not very inclusive or unintentionally highlighted special education students in a negative way. So some examples she shared were our students with special needs. Their names were left off a poster party list at the start of the school year. Our students with special needs were given red capes at a fundraiser, while no other students were. Our students in special education and their families, they were excluded from the general education room parent mail list, resulting in exclusion from play dates, birthday parties, social opportunities, many of which their children really needed to be able to be invited to. Special education students were never in the general education classroom pictures, and instead had labeled portrait pictures on pages with big bold lettering, ASD, Autism Spectrum Disorder Special Day Class. The child wasn't on the general ed roster from day one. That led to being excluded from back to school night opportunities where parents were unable to meet other parents. They didn't receive the weekly general education newsletter. The general education teacher did not view or treat their child as their student, and they were sent back to the special day class. Since her work as a parent ambassador and a foundation member, this parent reported that in collaboration with her principal, they've begun making small changes. All students will be photographed with their general education peers, and the fantastic ASD staff will be photographed and highlighted for their amazing work separately. Highlighting opportunities to include and support the special education community and faculty. The special education faculty are now included in fundraiser opportunities, like the biannual book fair. The speech and language pathologists and other staff are invited to select books and materials at the book fair, where families and the foundation can then purchase these materials for those providers. The special education staff seem so excited and positive that they're included in events and can get materials to use to work with all of their students. From day one, this parent ambassador's child was on the general education teacher roster. They were able to attend back to school for general education and for special education, and to meet the teacher outside of the IEP. They understood the teacher's expectations. They could see the general education classroom and hear what kids were mainstreamed would experience for their birthdays and other classroom celebrations. At the start of the school year, for this very first time, all students with special needs were invited to come to campus before school started. They were invited to come see their classrooms and meet their teachers before the first day of school. This parent got such great feedback from families that this opportunity reduced the first time back on campus anxiety, especially since they had a new teacher in the classroom and the walls were bare. With this level of proactive communication, the shock of a new teacher with a delayed start date, a completely bare, sterile special day classroom, gave us parents the ability to help our kids through this transition. It was so huge for our families where the children traveled by bus. The parent ambassador outreach opportunity at back to school night, the principal allowed the parent ambassador to introduce herself to the special education teachers and parents. The principal made herself available in the ASD classroom and engaged with parents. After back to school night, she saw a huge increase in special education families that attended the school's community events. The foundation created a portfolio for the inclusion and equity work, and now she's VP of Inclusion and Equity on their school site foundation. As a parent ambassador and foundation member, she's also actively working to include our special education support staff on the foundation's budget, so that they may be able to purchase materials needed to get their kiddos, all kiddos, excited to learn and to hit their IEP goals. This was so amazing and vital for the staff members to feel present, to feel valued. Another parent testimonial. Becoming a parent ambassador has improved my experience as a parent with a child with a disability in Poway Unified School District in a couple of ways. As a parent ambassador, I've been getting to know both my school, formally and informally. Working with all the people who are the conduit to improving our school was my first priority, as I would forward concerns, in essence, to our singular voice to support our students. Working with the principal, I was able to learn so much about the special education needs of our school. One issue that came up last year was that our school did not have a diaper changing table. I know the previous principal and special ed teachers have been trying to figure out this problem over the previous years. She was able to voice the concern and the need through the parent ambassador program And with help of myself and another director, we were able to secure a changing table the very next day. This year, she worked with the principal to plan and design a sensory room for the students with special needs during the school's first festival. Moreover, the principal and fellow special education parents and friends encouraged this parent ambassador to bring her son to the STEAM festival. Since the pandemic, her son's community exposure was very minimal, even non-existent. With school support and encouragement, she brought her son to the festival because even if he had behaviors in the community, they all knew him and they would support him. Also, the sensory room was there to help our students with special needs to find their emotional regulation if they were coming out of their comfort zone. Mom shared, as a parent, I was able to come out of my comfort zone because I was supported from the school, which in turn helps me mentally grow and helps me and my child confront their individual challenges. All right, lastly, one more to share. As a parent ambassador, I have really appreciated the way that becoming a parent ambassador makes all the special education machinery of the district more understandable. Being a parent ambassador is actually what inspired me to teach a class at the adult school for parents of children with IEPs related to the IEP process. I feel like the Parent Ambassador program has been a big deal for the parents, and I feel ready to do things out there. All right, next slide, please. Exploring the Cadre website, we found a helpful link for the top tips for state dispute resolution system managers pictured on this slide. Tip number 3, have the right people with the right skills in place to implement your vision. Understand your leadership style and learn group facilitation skills in order to motivate and inspire others. And reestablishing trusting relationships with our families, it was necessary to rebuild from the inside out. As a director, I requested to change my title from Director of Special Education to Director of Family Engagement, Support, and Resolution. Associate Superintendent Mizell supported this change, which then afforded our department more opportunities to rebrand. Our parent liaison, Deb Williford, was reclassified as the Parent Engagement Liaison. The collaboration between Deb and I works well, as I tend to be the more big picture planner, and she is more linear in nature. As partners, we've been able to collaboratively develop the necessary steps to make the Parent Ambassador vision come to fruition. Having someone who thinks differently than I do was necessary to progress with our district's need for resolving conflict at the lowest level. Tip number 10, emphasize early dispute resolution throughout your system. The earlier the resolution, the better. Allow for open communication and be certain that people understand their options. Look continuously for opportunities to find agreement. We recognized our system was lacking consistency with resolving conflict and developed the arrows noted at the top of this slide. Simple systems improvements. Parents were uncertain as to where to begin with their communications related to conflict. Where could they voice their concerns related to their children? Making improvements to our website and creating this chart really helped direct people to staff and resources. Our district had a relationship with Exceptionally Family Resource Center, EFRC, since the early 2000s, where they were invited in as third-party neutrals in our alternative dispute resolutions. During the summer of 2021, an opportunity presented where our parent engagement liaison and I were able to share a vision of partnership with EFRC, more than their role as just a third-party neutral. In this newly rekindled partnership, We meet every other week and share the trends and concerns we're hearing in our parent community. Specialized parent classes have been created by our EFRC partners, specific to our district's parents' concerns. These are offered to our families. Classes such as IEP 101, destigmatizing special education, and thinking about long-term goals. These were for our parents with students with special needs. These were created based on feedback from our parent ambassadors and our other parents within the community. As Greg shared earlier, alternative dispute resolution was prioritized in Poway Unified School District. As a trained mediator myself, it was important to have others with similar training to be available as needed in this conflict resolution process. Our partners, EFRC, sought out to recruit 2 parents of students with special needs who were willing and interested to be trained as mediators and would be on payroll with EFRC. These individuals now serve as our third-party neutrals and ADRs, which require such support. There are many times when a third-party neutral may not be necessary. In these cases, I will partner with one of our other directors to meet our families experiencing conflict to resolve those issues through a district facilitated ADR. Parents are made aware of our alternative dispute resolution through our parent ambassadors, our parent engagement liaison, our program specialists, directors, and school site leaders and staff. The stigma associated with teams being unable to fully resolve conflict without assistance is not as prevalent. Again, referring back to the arrows at the top of the slide, when parents do inquire about ADR, in the majority of our cases, they have already attempted to resolve the conflict at the lowest levels. Next slide, please. And Mr. Mizell, I'm going to turn it back to you.
Okay, so thank you, Director Payne and Michelle, for your content added to this presentation. We're coming up on 50 minutes, close to an hour. It's a lot of sit and get for people in the audience. Let me just close this out and then we'll take questions. I want to close by saying, kind of like I opened, right, with humility. We can't predict the impact of a worldwide pandemic on our team's efforts, reducing due process filings and litigation forward. Like, we really can't. I mean, we're all hopeful, right, that the foundation we've laid the last few years will sustain us through this present moment and well beyond. Our department is really trying to reasonably meet our students and their families where they're at. And I think we've established in multiple contexts now that we can engage in disagreements in healthy and productive ways. It's our hope that effectively partnering with parents, we can spend less time and energy embroiled in conflict and more time and energy exploring ways to continuously improve our students' experiences. So with that, we'll conclude our formal presentation, let's say that. And now we can look at questions. So one of the first questions I saw, Bill asked, with all the things the district was changing, there must have been some pushback. Where did it come from and how did you address it? Jody, you've done a lot of talking, so I'm going to let you breathe for a moment. Michelle, you want to jump in? Where was there pushback? Michelle, by the way, has probably never experienced pushback. She's just
everywhere, literally everywhere. I will say, though, that as much pushback as there was, the more that we talked, the more we didn't just offer training, say we were going to do it, but we actually did it. The more that started to recede, but I would say it came from everywhere. The teachers union leadership was a big one. They were very nervous. This is a big change. A little hand holding and a little reassurance that we're not just going to throw this out there and let you deal with all the fallout. That was building some trust, though. We're not going to tell you. Part of the fear was that we were going to just put all of these kids with disabilities into a classroom. We're just going to set these kids in your classroom and walk away. So building some trust that that wasn't how this was going to happen. We realized that all of our staff needs some support. And first and foremost, those kids need a lot of support. We're not going to leave them high and dry right away. So really addressing that. And, you know, to my chagrin, it's a slow process. We're going to go slowly. We're going to bring people along. It's not going to be an overnight thing. So that was, at least from my perspective as a school board member and a parent, that was part of what I was seeing. Greg, what do you got?
So I can pick on inclusion, since you started there. Let's just talk about that, because, you know, that's a topic that's wildly popular. I know everywhere. I joke like that. Isn't it interesting? I don't know what it's like in other districts, but I can tell you here, we don't have parents storming the board meeting demanding more inclusive opportunities for their kids. In fact, it's almost just the opposite. They fought so hard to get, right, the extra services and supports for their children that they're very reluctant to let them go. They're fearful, right? And they had to fight like crazy to get what they got. Like the last thing they want to hear is it's all going to shift. The other thing is, because we had so much programming, especially as it relates to supporting students with autism in this district, we've had a number of families move in to our school district for those specialized programs and services, which really aren't in alignment with LRE or current research, right? So as you start to implement change and then you add to it a pandemic, it creates all kinds of challenges. Michelle, you're absolutely right. Like the unions, both on the classified and certificated side, like they're supportive. I mean, as long as they don't get too many phone calls. But it's really hard, right, to stop those phone calls, because on every campus, there's a few people, right, who are absolutely not just neutral, against, opposed to inclusion. And some of those staff members include people with special education credentials. Like honestly, that's been shocking to me. Some of the folks with mild to moderate to severe credentials are super nervous for our kids, right? And what their experience will be like in a more mainstream general education classroom setting. So shifting from, you know, excessive programming to all of our kids are general education kids first is massive. We hosted last week our very first all district inclusion summit. How about that? We had Shelley Moore. Some of you may be familiar with her. If you're not, 5 more minutes. It's on YouTube. Check her out. She's amazing. We had her as our keynote. And we had our program specialists, directors, and ed specialists, like a whole group of people who led over 30 breakouts. And this was, again, district-wide, 4,000 or 5,000 people participating in conversation and having that lived experience training. What's co-teaching look like? What's universal design for learning all about? You know, all of those. How do we build a master schedule at the secondary level in particular that affords general education teachers and special education teachers the opportunity to collaborate, like common prep periods, like all of those things, right, in the weeds. So exciting work. But I was with I was with special education labor yesterday at the Union Hall, and every time I go there, I'm a little nervous. I'm just waiting for, you know, like, okay, so where's it coming from and what's it going to sound like? And I think in those contexts, just like in these contexts that we've been talking about this morning with our parents, right? It's so important that you start with relationship. It's so important that you listen to understand. The fear-based behavior is just that. So if you can not respond to the behavior, but really listen to what's driving, right, the behavior and answer that, like, I think that's where we can, you know, continue to move the needle. We in this district with inclusive practices have started with volunteers. That's why it's a little slower. We don't want hostages and we don't want it to feel top down. And we have had great success with that model.
Greg, let me make sure this wasn't the focus of this presentation, but yeah. Greg's department also has a really innovative program with COSAs, classifieds on special assignment. And we brought in IAs and gave them a job to speak directly to their other classified brethren and IAs, our instructional assistants district-wide, and do that training. And they speak with teachers too. And I think when that training is coming from one of your own, that's very helpful too, and really helps to calm any fears and that pushback in coming from that sector in addition. And that program has been an incredible bright spot in our district.
I totally agree. The Inclusive Practices team, you guys can learn more about that on our website, again, under the Special Education tab. You just slide down to Inclusive Practices and our story is there. We have teachers on special assignment and classified on special assignment who are leading PD. And let me just say, the classified and special assignment, here's a great example. That idea came from our union president on the classified side. I wish I was that smart and could take credit for coming up with that. It wasn't me. So good things happen when we listen to our sometimes critics. Good things happen when we pay attention to relationship, when we include more people and more perspective, right, in the work and in the challenges we're attempting to address. We get smarter. We work better. So yes, inclusion is a big story. The other example that I already alluded to, I'll just very quickly touch on this because, Bill, it's a big question. Yes, pushback on all sides, as Michelle said. Dyslexia, let's just go back there. You know why we were ignoring people for years? Because we had a balanced literacy program that we'd adopted. We'd invested, I don't even know how much money in it. And it's not deep, it's not strong. Like for 85% of the kids that don't have a language-based challenge, it's fine. But for the 15%, 20% who really do struggle, who need direct, explicit, systematic instruction, it lacks. And then when you look at, so what does intervention look like? Well, 3 years ago, right, it didn't look great. Like you had pockets of excellence, but you didn't have systemic, there was no systemic approach. Right. So now imagine I'm on the special ed side of the house and I'm trying to work with the learning support services side of the house. I'm trying to get our gen ed teachers, right, to recognize that dyslexia is not a special education or uniquely or solely special education issue. It's like there's a lot of kids with and without labels who struggle learning to read. What if we changed our instructional approach? So sometimes the challenge, the pushback comes from labor, right? We like to blame unions, especially if you're at my level in leadership. It's hard work, but you know what? Sometimes it's people just down the hall, other instructional leaders who just have a different perspective, right? Who don't see what you see, and because of that, maybe aren't always leading with empathy or a deep understanding, right, of the problem you're trying to solve and how they might be partners. And so building those bridges, those relationships, it takes time. We've made great progress, right? I'm so proud to say we started training 200. We trained 200 of our staff in the special education division on the IMSE, Institute for Multisensory Education. Some of you may be familiar with that. This year, our general education teachers, K2, are having that experience. Like, it's incredible, right? So it's step by step, it's incremental, and yes, there's pushback. And then you add a pandemic and crankiness, everybody misbehaving, right? The tipping point just below the surface. Like, it's a really hard time to be a leader, but we have not slowed our roll. We are pressing forward and super excited and honored, right, to be in these positions and to have this opportunity. So, Bill, thank you for that question. I hope we got it. There's a couple more in here.
Yeah, let me just close off Bill's question, and I will say that I have offered to Greg and his team at all times, if you need to have an excuse for what we're asking people to do, throw me under the bus. Oh, that darn school board, they're making us do this. I do not mind taking on that role and taking that hit. I frankly don't have to take it very often because people are on board. And that comes from learning more, but I've been willing to take that hit as well. That next question we're about to move to, what advice do I have for parents whose school district hasn't yet done this hard work? What's a good first step for parents in districts that aren't yet responsive, inclusive, et cetera? And I was jotting down some notes when I first saw this one, and I could write a book. If you don't want to run for school board, that's the first one. Boy, jump in, come on. We need great people in here. I had a lot of things that I wanted to note, and then I'll turn it over for more thoughts to Greg and Jody. But I would say every single SELPA has a CAC, that Community Advisory Committee for Special Education. Our district happens to be, its own SELPA, so we have, oh boy, I got a jet. I'm sorry, that's going to be annoying to you guys. But join your CAC. That's a representative group. The membership is elected and approved by the SELPA, and in our district, the school board. Join that group because they bring a lot of attention to issues. They really bring things to the forefront. I would say your child's school site council. Get on your school site council. That group helps set priorities for how each school, each individual school site is going to prioritize money that they receive and different programs. On that note, PTAs and foundations, please join whatever your school has, because if you don't, how do families that don't have experience with students with disabilities, they don't know what those different needs are. If they're not aware that they need to have an area at their school dance for kids who can't handle the noise, whose sensory percept they're overloaded, how are they going to do anything to accommodate kids with different needs if their families aren't there to advocate for that? So make your family's needs visible, and the PTAs and foundations are really great ways to do that. You get a voice with your principal and your teachers and your school leadership, and you become a member of your school's leadership group, and they will start to look to you when planning events, like, oh, what do we need to do for our students with disabilities? Let's make sure we didn't forget. So that's a role that parents can definitely play. Give input on your LCAP, the local control accountability plan for your district. Make sure that students with disabilities are not an afterthought. Jump in there. Districts are required to take that parent input. Make sure you don't skip it. Do it. Take some time. Yeah, what else? I don't know. Again, I could write a book on this, I swear. Maybe I should. But Greg, you have some other thoughts? Jody?
I was just going to chime in and echo what you had shared. The parent ambassadors, many of them are involved in multiple committees at the school site level. And even the testimonials I shared out, that's exactly what they said. Their voice, they're putting it into every possible place that they can. So, you know, whether that be a part of the foundation, whether that be part of the PTA or whatever, many, again, of our parent ambassadors are already on 3, 4, 5 different committees for the site. So that way they're not forgotten. They say they physically show up and they're like, aha, let's think about all of our kiddos. So yeah, I think that's a great suggestion, Michelle.
I think you guys hit it. I think for parents, it's challenging sometimes to know where to push in and who to talk to and what to share and what not to share. But here's the deal. Nobody advocates for a child like a parent. Nobody. So never apologize for your advocacy. I mean, there's a way, right, to engage with people respectfully and patiently. Remember, they don't know what you know. So give a little grace. But be persistent. That's what I would say. Be persistent. And if you have a crucial conversation and you're not sure someone's going to follow up, trailer it with an email. So you have a time date stamp. Hey, today we met in the parking lot and I shared with you this concern, but you had suggested that you were going to follow up and that I might hear from you in a week or so. Really looking forward to hearing an update. Like do that, right? So you create a paper trail. Just little like pro tips like that. Kind of add accountability so that good intention people do what they say they're going to do, right? And then yeah, hopefully you can move things. I thought those were really great suggestions on parents. So, but lean in. That's how we start. And thank you even for asking that question, because that tells me, right, you're interested. So good stuff. Okay, I'm looking to see if there's any other questions.
There's a market for my book, Greg.
Say that again.
There's a market for my book that I haven't read.
I know, huh? Chapters. For sure.
Right there.
The training of
there
IAs.
is one other question.
Yeah, I saw that there was a comment just affirming the training of IAs as a positive thing. I will tell you that our instructional assistants, our paras, they receive the message so much better when it's one of their own, when it's someone who's walked their walk, lived their life, earned their wage, been bit, kicked, punched, spit on, like all that stuff. Like our classified staff are amazing. And so, yes, trying to work with those teams to own their own learning, right? Like the leadership within the classified unions and the rank. So often on a professional learning day, they're kind of forgotten, right? Like I don't know that leadership spends enough time thinking about that group and their needs. So in our district, you know, I think we're making progress, working collaboratively and really better understanding what our staff need, and then providing training and resources to ensure they get what they need. Okay, other questions?
Yeah, I can take the next one to start with. The question is, are there mediators you employ who are not parents of children with disabilities, as well as the two parents? So currently, again, as I shared, I am a trained mediator, so I'm one of the levels or layers in that. But as far as employing other mediators, it's Exceptional Family Resource Center that employs the two parents. They're not parents of our own kiddos. And yes, they both are, as I stated earlier, parents of kiddos with special needs. So I guess I'm kind of just reinforcing that. No, we don't. Michelle, I think you wanted to answer a little more on that question. Oh, no. Okay. All right. Are there other questions out there?
I think we've cleared the queue. And we've done pretty good on our time. We're at an hour and 10 minutes. So I love a meeting that starts on time and ends early.
That's absolutely true. I agree with you there, Greg. Well, thank you so much, Greg, Michelle, Jody. We have much to gain from your examples and the efforts that you've done there. The combination of numbers and the testimony of families was very compelling, and we appreciate your leadership and the time you took to bring the story to the national community. We hope that you found the information valuable today and meaningful for your important work in the field, and know that we are always interested here at Cadre in learning about innovative practices. So please share with us what you're doing out there. We'd love to hear from you. We wanted to offer you a last-minute chance to register for the Cadre Symposium to be held October 26th and 28th in Denver, Colorado. So while registration is officially closed, if you contact us at Cadre this week, we'll sneak you in under the wire. So just email us at cadre@directionservice.org. And again, your feedback is very important to us. So please click on the link in the chat box to fill out a very brief Survey Monkey to evaluate today's webinar. We value your feedback and we take it to heart, so please. And then if you have information, or excuse me, if you would like some more follow-up information about Cadre, or you would like to reach out to us, here's our information. And you can always sign up for the Cadre newsletter, where you can learn about what's coming down the pike. So from all of us at Cadre, thank you for joining us today. Again, thank you, Michelle, Jody, and Greg. We appreciate you all, and have a fantastic school year, everybody. Bye.